What's wrong with feminism?
Let me take a drink. A lot of things. So it's funny because, you know, I write about feminism and gender from a Catholic perspective. That's kind of my jam, women's issues, etc. And I get critiques from both the right and the left for different things. But what both of them agree on is that I'm a radical feminist, which is so funny. It cracks me up because the people who don't like me from the left
think you're a radical feminist?
I'm a radical feminist because I think women are female, right? Which is now, that's all it takes to make you a radical feminist. And then people on the kind of far right think I'm a radical feminist just because sometimes I'll use the label feminist and I haven't become an outright anti-feminist. And, you know, I think it's okay for women to be educated and work outside the home. So it's funny that I'm called a radical feminist for things. I'm like actually a really boring person. You know, I'm a mother of 4. I don't really have any interesting hobbies.
I'm into Star Trek.
I love Star Trek. I like to read and hang out with my husband. You know, I was married at the age of 22. Cool. I'm a devout Catholic. You know, it's just so funny that because of the beliefs I hold, I think it's a sign of how like polarized our culture has become in a way. But all that to say, even though my detractors call me a radical feminist, most of the time when I'm writing about feminism, I'm actually critiquing it, right? So if I am a feminist, I'm very much a dissident one or a problematic one or a heretical one. I like to call myself a heretical feminist because I'm a Catholic first. So anything, any way that I approach feminist issues is going to be from a Catholic worldview rather than from, I would say, the implicit worldview of most versions of feminism. So there's a lot that's wrong with feminism. So I'm trying to think where to begin. It's one tricky thing about talking about feminism is that there are so many different forms of feminism and there are different historical kind of waves of feminism. So feminism tends to be a little bit, what's the word? Like when you, what's the word when like an organism that kind of like latches onto another organism?
Oh, like something that's
symbiotic.
Symbiotic kind of, yeah.
Like
yeah. It's
parasitic.
like
parasitic.
Okay. So depending on which, whether you want to choose a more negative or positive light. But I think feminism tends to be parasitic on other forms of philosophy, right? So you have liberal feminism that's going to very much take for granted the kind of liberal premises of what a human person is and what an ideal society is, right? Or you have Marxist feminism that's going to very much take those, because feminism has never had a lot of content to it.
Why is it even a thing? So maybe, this is wonderful when I interview academics, because you've thought and written about this forever. Right. So I guess I'm trying to get like an umbrella, like, you know, bird's eye view of it before we go into it. Like, why is it even a thing? Why is feminism a thing? Okay,
so I'll just give you like a little historical tour.
Yeah.
So the term feminism first originated at the end of the 19th century. And the first wave of feminism, as it's usually called, especially when we're talking about America, was very much focused on the on earning the vote for women and also addressing legal inequalities. For example, women not being able to inherit property, women not having any kind of custodial rights over their children whatsoever, women not serving on juries, and women not being able to vote, that sort of thing. And so there was not in first wave feminism generally an attempt to like overthrow the system. It was like, no, we like this system. We like this liberal system that America has. We just want to be active participants in it. We want the legal protections that men have extended to women. And first wave feminism actually grew out of the temperance movement in America, the attempt to ban alcohol. And that's the first issue that women organized politically around, because there was such rampant alcoholism at that time. I mean, it was just horrible. And so, of course, like that, then that means there's domestic abuse and that was actually super like Christian Protestant, right? Like, so those were kind of the first wave feminists. So they were, by and large, they were not pro-abortion. They were not pro-birth control. They thought the best way to regulate births was male chastity, men being able to regulate themselves better. So that was first wave feminism. And then it pretty much just like disbanded as soon as women got the vote in 1920. And that's why they talk about different waves, because there was really a long period between the early 20th century and then the mid 20th century when you got second wave feminism and the women's liberation movement.
So what defined that? How come second wave feminism how do you distinguish that from first wave?
Okay, so second wave feminism was much more focused on, it became much more embroiled in the abortion rights movement, right? So actually I think one of the most brilliant things and diabolical things that the pro-abortion, like NARAL, National Abortion Rights League people, which was predominantly like all male-led before second wave feminism. So that their kind of brilliant diabolical strategy was to win over the feminists, which they did in the second wave feminism. And so second wave feminism was much more influenced by, I would say, more kind of Marxist, socialist kind of philosophies that was like, let's actually disrupt the liberal order. This isn't good. And then also that's when feminism became really aligned with the pro-abortion movement, and then contraception and abortion basically became like the most important things for second wave feminists.
It makes sense according to their ideology, because if you wish to have the same opportunities as men, then you're going to have to do something about reproducing.
And if you look at like social, like Marxism, for example, let's see, like for example, in Simone de Beauvoir's book, The Second Sex, her like solution to sexism is basically a Marxist revolution, where you have the burden of child care and rearing is basically handed off to the state.
God have mercy.
And men and women become these like interchangeable worker brothers.
What?
I mean, it's funny. That is
exactly what it looks like.
Right. And so that's, if you think about that kind of influencing how feminism developed in that second wave, it makes sense that basically the solution to women's oppression, femaleness was basically scapegoated for women's oppression. So in order for women to be truly liberated, they have to essentially be free from femaleness. That means free from the possibility of pregnancy. And then should a pregnancy occur, women need to be able to walk away from it just like a man can, right?
How horrible.
Yep.
To say that we're feminists, which means we have to do away with what's feminine.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things. So that's one of the critiques I make about feminism, is that there's actually this implicit male, or this implicit masculine bias within it, because the ideal to which women are held is implicitly male, right? It's implicitly about, I think also part of the problem is that the subject, or the view of the person in liberalism is the autonomous subject that's not interdependent, this kind of man is an island sort of idea. And I think the phenomenon of pregnancy really is incompatible with that. And you see that all the time just in the rhetoric in the abortion debates, right? Because the rhetoric is all about focusing on like the autonomy of women, or like my body, my choice. Well, the difficulty here, the tricky part of pregnancy is that there's two bodies and there's in one body, right? So our kind of autonomous rights-based language does not actually accommodate the reality of pregnancy very well. Anyway, so yes, I think that that's one of the central ironies of feminism, is that it actually has adopted an ideology that I think actually came from Margaret Sanger, in her kind of actually she wasn't pro-abortion, interestingly, but her pro-birth control policies. Because so when Margaret Sanger, she actually didn't like first wave feminism because she thought they didn't take it far enough. And when she first started her work in the early 20th century, she was very eugenicist and very pro-birth control. And when she first started her work, her eugenicist views were very socially accepted, but her birth control views were very against what society thought. And by the time she kind of finished that work, by the 1950s when the birth control pill was being developed, America had a complete 180 turn on and had become really accepting of birth control. And Sanger is explicit in her writings about scapegoating the female body for all of society's problems, like poverty, even tyranny. You know, it's like, well, tyrants, it's still women's fault because they gave birth to them, right? You know, and so she just thought if we can just kind of like stop women from having babies, then that will solve everything. And I think that American feminism has like deeply imbibed that lie.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought about the video.